Genesis chapter 15, NKJV. God's covenant with Abram. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." But Abram said, "Lord God, what will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus?" Then Abram said, "Look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir." And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "This one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir." Then he brought him outside and said, "Look now toward heaven, and count the stars, if you are able to number them." And he said to him, "So shall your descendants be." And he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. Then he said to him, "I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to inherit it." And he said, "Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it?" So he said to him, "Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon." Then he brought all these to him and cut them in two, down the middle, and placed each piece opposite the other. But he did not cut the birds in two. And when the vultures came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Now, when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. And behold, horror and great darkness fell upon him. Then he said to Abram, "Know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. And also the nation whom they serve I will judge. Afterward they shall come out with great possessions. Now as for you, you shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete." And it came to pass, when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between those pieces. On the same day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, "To your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river Euphrates, the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, and the Jebusites." The end. Here are the key theological concepts in Genesis 15, a chapter that serves as a cornerstone for biblical theology. 1. Faith and justification. Verse 6. Abram believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. This introduces the doctrine of justification by faith, later echoed in Romans 4:3 and Galatians 3:6. Righteousness is not earned by works, but received through trust in God's promises. 2. The covenant with Abram. God formalizes his covenant with Abram through a solemn ritual involving animal sacrifices and a divine vision. This covenant guarantees Abram descendants as numerous as the stars and the inheritance of the land. It emphasizes God's initiative. The covenant is unilateral, established by God's faithfulness rather than Abram's performance. 3. Divine promise and assurance. God reassures Abram of his promises despite Abram's doubts about being childless. The imagery of countless stars symbolizes the certainty and vastness of God's promises. The covenant ceremony, smoking firepot and blazing torch passing between pieces, signifies God's binding commitment. 4. God's sovereignty over history. The prophecy about Abram's descendants being enslaved for 400 years, but later delivered, shows God's control over future events. This foreshadows Israel's exodus from Egypt and highlights divine providence in salvation history. 5. Grace and election. Abram is chosen not because of merit, but because of God's gracious will. The covenant reflects God's election of Abram and his descendants as the people, through whom salvation history unfolds. Summary: Genesis 15 is a theological milestone because it establishes faith as the basis of righteousness, reveals God's covenant-making nature, demonstrates His sovereignty and providence in history, highlights His grace and election in choosing Abram.